The World Series is over. The offseason is here. Alex Kirilloff has retired, and it's time to resume our Twins Players Future Series. If you want to come along, though, you'll need to get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to destination for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. I'm co-host Dave Brown, a professional ball writer since 1998, a BBWAA member since 2012, and a Baseball Hall of Fame voter since about a year ago. So please follow me on Twitter at @AnswerDaveBrown if you like. Across from me in cyberspace is Brandon Warren, a Twins watcher for 30 years who not long ago covered the team on a daily basis professionally. He asks that you kindly elevate the discourse with him on Twitter at Brandon_Warren. Here's what's coming up on this podcast. With the 2024 season completely in the rearview mirror, thanks to the Dodgers winning the World Series against the Yankees, we resume our discussions about every player on the Twins roster through the prism of Phil Miller's analytical column recently published in the Minnesota Star Tribune. Here are the subjects of today's show. Jovani Moran, left-handed relief pitcher. Bailey Ober, like a 7'5" giant right-handed pitcher. Stephen Okert, who's left-handed, and that's why he's around. Chris Paddack, he's a pitcher. And Joe Ryan, he's a pitcher too. Those are the targets of our not ire, but our focus. It's a positive-ish look at these guys, maybe if they deserve it. Well, we'll see. Across from me, of course, Brandon Warren. Brandon, can you tell us who's bringing us this fine episode?
Well, good afternoon, sports fans. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you will get $50 instantly when you place your first $5 lineup bet. PrizePicks. Run your game.
You run that game. You run it. We're going to run with Jovani Moran. I'm actually excited about Jovani Moran, the prospects for him. He's got a couple of good things going for him. One bad thing, he's coming off Tommy John surgery. He's 27 years old. Tommy John surgery, I can't get a definitive date for the Tommy John surgery. And the reporter in me doesn't like that very much. I want to know times. I want to know who the anesthesiologist was. I want to know details, but I don't have all that information. It was the last 2 weeks of November last year. So it's been about a year. Tommy John surgery, it seems like they're conservative these days with how long it takes to get back. So I'm thinking 14 months, 13 months, but it'll be a year, more or less in a couple of weeks or so. So that should get him on track to be one of the lefties competing for a spot. I think that the Twins have given themselves lots of reason to make sure that he makes the team if it's possible. And there's going to be some openings in the left-handed bullpen area. As we know, that was not a strength for the Twins a year ago, a month ago even. So are we excited about Jovani Moran, Mr. Brandon?
Well, as we mentioned on a previous show, the Twins had the highest ERA from left-handed relievers, highest, I think, OPS against, and second highest WHIP. So in some respects, Moran picked the perfect year to not pitch. And then at the same time, quite the opposite. They could have really used him. Now, again, he's got command issues that are well documented. And that's kind of, I think, what's separating him from being a dependable after. If you're familiar, befores are before the Twins take the lead, afters are after the Twins take a lead. But he could dependably be a before to start the season, assuming he's healthy, and also too, you go through sometimes those growing pains of when guys come back, with Joe Nathan coming back in, was it 2011? I want to say, he needed some time to kind of work through that command coming back and all that other, kind of rigmarole that goes with Tommy John surgery and breaking up the scar tissue and, feeling like yourself on the mound again. So hopefully if he gets that opportunity, and I think he very well could, hopefully that adjustment period isn't too long, but he should also have the benefit of, Stephen Okert, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, probably won't be in that discussion. Caleb Thielbar probably won't be in that discussion. And then beyond that, he might have a pretty smooth path outside of if they invite somebody to spring training, a Brad Hand type or something like that. So I think he's got a good chance as good a chance as any non-roster player of making the roster in 2025.
Brad Hand, where did he end the season? Was he a Marlin? Where was he at the end of last
year? Honestly, I kind of lost track of him after Toronto. He started as a Marlin, and he didn't play this year in the majors. He was with the Rockies and Braves in 2023. Chaska, Minnesota high school graduate, by the way. So does have some Twins ties. Did not play anywhere professionally in 2024 and is 34 years old, will be 35 in early March. So I think if he was going to do some sort of comeback, I think the Twins would probably have a leg up on at least trying to bring him in.
Only 34 years old, but of course, sometimes when you're a pitcher in the major leagues, your elbow is older than the rest of you. It precedes you in terms of getting old. But
reminds me of my favorite meme. I don't care that you broke your elbow.
Is that like the Little League dad talking to the kid? Is that
no? It's actually a kid in the computer lab, and he's like, "I'm gonna say it," and the kids are like kind of egging him on. They're like, "Say it, say it, say it," and he goes, "I don't care that you broke your elbow." And he looks a lot like my younger brother Taylor, and so that too is also why it's so funny to me. But it's like this guy thinks he's gonna unleash just the nastiest thing, and it's, "I don't care that you broke your elbow."
Well, hopefully they have more empathy and sympathy for Brad Hand, Mr. Hand,
or Jovani Moran for that matter,
or Jovani Moran. Jovani Moran, 27 years old, killer changeup when he was really good 2 years ago. That was his jam. But of course, like you said, he's got these issues with command, so he's not. It's not like the Twins are going to be relying on him to be the left-handed guy, but they had a strange, Okert. Well, we'll talk about Okert in a second, or maybe in the next segment, or maybe we'll just skip him entirely. But it didn't work out. Let's just say.
And he was still somehow better than the guy he was traded for.
He would have been great in those years. Well, we're talking about Okert already. All right, so we're jumping around, but he was good against left-handed batters. The problem is they figured out a way to not let him face the other team did left-handed batters all the time. And he was really bad against right-handed batters.
He kind of got, if I can say this, boned by the rule where he can't have a lefty specialist. And you know what? It's okay if we give Okert the last little bit of this first segment, because Bailey Ober deserves possibly a full or full-ish segment all to himself. So I don't feel bad.
A full postseason share, if you will.
Yes. Yeah. And Okert, I mean, I understood the idea. Certainly would have been nice if they would have gotten AJ Puck instead. And I kind of banged the drum for that. Not as loud as, for instance, Victor Robles, obviously showing off my player assessment analysis chops with two guys who played well and deliberately ignoring some of the guys that I probably said who didn't perform. But Okert, the idea of Okert worked and made sense. And again, Nick Gordon was so bad for the Marlins that still Okert, as bad as he was like a full win better.
It isn't so much like what they gave up for Okert, obviously, but it's just, see, Okert is kind of the personification of why I cringe when somebody says, well, there's no harm in bringing this person in. And they say that like there's no downside because it's like a contract that is favorable to the team. basically.
Mhm.
Either the money isn't too great or it's a short-term deal. So what's the harm? Well, the harm is that you could put him out there and he could cost you like 5 or 6 games. That's the harm.
It's kind of like he's young, he's only going to get better. Well, no, that's an old adage that needs to go away. It's not accurate in the least.
Speaking of going away, let's talk more about Bailey Ober after we come back from going away.
Oh, we can manage that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump you there.
No, just got to pay attention. You can get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. You gotta win, though. So make sure you pick something that you feel confident about. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. That's right. That's the FanDuel app. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game or you just want to check out the latest stats, view live, play-by-play, and all of that plus so much more on the same page where you place your bets, the FanDuel app is where you need to be. Or go to FanDuel.com to sign up and join today. And again, $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We are talking about predicting Twins players 2025 futures. We've talked about Jovani Moran already being a member of the bullpen at some point.
Does it remind you of that old Cardinals fan says, "Get a brain, Morans," and it's supposed to say morons, but it's spelled wrong?
Yeah, I think of that every time.
Colin Moran too gets me that way.
Right. So yeah, I think about that more than I should probably, and I feel like maybe I should get a brain from time to time. But now we've touched on Moran, we touched on Stephen Okert. Now we're going to talk about Bailey Ober, who he didn't have he might have had the best. He had a better B-WAR, baseball reference WAR than Pablo Lopez. He had a better. So some of his secondary statistics were better than Lopez. I don't know if people realize that. Not to sound like John Smoltz. People don't know. People don't know that Bailey Ober was better than Pablo Lopez, according to John Smoltz. Just a great continuing story of how the Twins have developed certain starting pitchers. He's at the head of the class as far as that goes. He's been a terrific success story for the Twins, and I'd like to see them sign him to a long-term extension that eats up some free agent time. But who knows what in the shadows what that holds for the Twins as far as spending that kind of money.
Well, and he's not a free agent until after 2027, and he's already 29. So that might make things tricky because Joe Ryan is also probably older than people realize, and we'll talk about him in a little bit too. But with Ober, I'm not sure you could have two more similar seasons than the last two. He made 5 more starts, so his his WAR jumped from 2.4 to 2.9, right? So 9.1 strikeouts per 9 in 2023, 9.6 in 2024. With that came a slight increase in walk rate, still incredible at 217, up from 181. Homers went from 137 per 9 to 136. Boy, that's a big difference. Ground ball rate 34.3 to 33.5. Ain't no thing with this Twins defense, though, because they prefer fly ball guys. Maybe they shouldn't, but they do. Average fastball velocity 91.4 to 91.7, so a bit of an uptick. And then sub 4 ERA, half run higher. I don't know how different the run environment was to where that would probably be at least semi-similar. But even the home run to fly ball ratio, 11.3% of his fly balls left the yard in 2023, 11.5% this year. So basically what you see is what you get with Bailey Ober. And I feel, again, this doesn't carry as much weight as it used to, but Bailey Ober could definitely start, let's say, game 3 of a playoff series for me. Game 2, if it really came down to it. And again, I don't know how much that means when who started game 4 for the Dodgers. I don't even remember his name.
Well, it was Kasperitis. It wasn't Kasperitis. It was something like
Right? No, I'm confusing with the guy who grabbed Capo. Something was the guy who grabbed Mookie Betts.
Yeah, he might be a capo in some organized crime organization as well. And that's not how you phrase that, organized crime organization. But let's not get too off the track here. Bailey, there was something interesting about how Bailey Ober went about it. He kind of reintroduced a cutter, or maybe introduced for the first time in serious volumes this year. Maybe he's played with it before, but that was like, it took away from how good he was with the fastball. He was much more. I don't know if he didn't feel like he was confident in throwing as many fastballs in the way that he did 2 years ago. But that's one difference in how Ober went about getting people out last year. He was again really good with the changeup, solid with a slider, as the Twins love that. He threw a lot more cutters. It didn't really work for him in terms of run value, but I suppose pitches, as we know, pitchers throw pitches sometimes to set up other pitches. So as a placeholder to get him from point A to point B to point C, it would be interesting to me to see if he continues to work on the cutter. If he can make that, might be the next step for him in terms of taking another leap in value. If he can make that pitch work and not get burned with it, he could be double secret, extremely hard to beat.
Well, and I think there's a curiosity in his profile in that I think anytime you throw 91, 92, no matter how well your extension plays up and your height, and you throw it up in the strike zone, high up, you're going to have to reinvent yourself, or at least change off and on. 2021, he threw the fastball 58.1% of the time in 92 and a third innings. That was down to, I scrolled past it here, 38.1%. The cutter, almost 20% after not throwing at all. And he did throw that at the expense of his slider, curveball, and fastball. Now, here's something I saw in the weighted, values that struck me as interesting. His slider, went from minus 3.2 to plus 6.5. Now, that difference more than offsets the cutter's negative value. And it makes me wonder if that cutter slider combination is just enough to keep batters off balance, because cutter is kind of like a shorter slider, a firmer slider. And if you can introduce two pitches that are that similar, but at the same time just different enough that you get probably pop-ups, lazy fly balls, and that sort of thing, I think it's fairly intuitive that he added that to his repertoire. And I'm eager to see, because if that is something that he continues to do where the cutter improves, he will stray further from the fastball, which straying from the fastball might make the fastball better too. And his pop-up rate did jump. 10.3% was a career high. So weak fly ball contact. He might be onto something here.
Definitely. I think cutter also, it's my impression that it is a little less stressful on the elbow. So when the innings pile, the career innings pile up for him, anything to take some stress off there is a good thing. So even if it doesn't fully develop, it's still a change in the repertoire that could have benefits a couple different ways.
They've slow played his innings too. I mean, that was a big point of contention in the fan base, was why is he only throwing 74, 83 pitches? Why is he only throwing? Like, it took a while for him to build up to this year's total, which was 178 and 2/3 innings. Now, a guy going from never throwing 150 to 180, I think that validates, or that vindicates their path to get him to where he was this year. He made 31 starts. They did right by Bailey Ober, and you really can't deny it anymore.
For the most part, 99%, I agree with you. I wonder sometimes, there was that start in Kansas City where he was shoving basically for 7 innings, and Rocco took him out, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, and that was bad.
Yeah, I don't know that the season turns around in a bad, if they don't do that, if they win that game, because I don't think we can just say like 2 bad innings led to the demise down the stretch. But if you wanted to point to a place where the Twins started to lose it, coincidentally or not, that was one. So at the same time, while they are doing right by him, Ober, in terms of his load management and not stressing him out too much, I think maybe that was a time when they could have let him run a little bit more to see what he could have finished off. And I don't think the Twins would have made the playoffs had they won that game, but that certainly is a milepost, and a signpost up ahead that I don't know, things weren't great after that, coincidentally or not. So I'd like to see him get a little more run next year to finish off starts like that every once in a while, and maybe take some stress off the bullpen or give him a chance to finish, or however you want to put it. But that kind of bothered me still.
Yeah,
but,
I think you're right. I think that will happen.
All right, so we've talked about Jovani Moran, we've talked about Bailey Ober, Stephen Okert. We've still got Chris Paddack and Joe Ryan. Let's take our last break, and then we'll cram them into the back end and discuss where we think Chris Paddack will be and Joe Ryan going ahead.
That's quite a turn of phrase, but I'll leave it at that.
That's how I am. Sorry.
Well, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members, up from 5 million. So that's exciting. And billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. We love being a valued PrizePicks partner, and you know what? It's I can't emphasize enough how customizable this experience is to your risk tolerance. If you want to play big risk, if you want to play small risk, if you want to mix and match, if you want to mix and match sports, it really is as customizable as it gets. You can win up to 100 times your money in as few as 4 correct picks. They're now up to over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia. I don't think that's a state. And Texas. Georgia plus Texas. Georgia's. Definitely forget about Louisiana, Mississippi, and everyone in between. But it is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform that has an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured, especially valuable in football when it seems like everybody gets injured every other game. But if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your picks live. Again, join over 10 million users and sign up today. That's right, it's PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even have to win. Again, Locked On MLB, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
We are talking about predicting the Twins players' spot in the 2025 roster. We've discussed Jovani Moran, Bailey Ober, Stephen Okert, and now we're going to talk Chris Paddack. Paddack, he's got a hilarious stat, and it's out of the ordinary for major leaguers, but not for him. He has 89 career walks in his major league career and 67 home runs allowed. That's hilarious. I mean, every year it's the same thing. This year, no different. In 17 starts, he allowed 14 home runs, which is, too many, but not the end of the world, and only 21 walks. So this is a guy, obviously, who's around the plate. I wonder if injuries have taken their toll a little bit, and you have to be really kind of perfect to make that work, to throw that many strikes and not get killed with a home run. He's kind of a guy that has gotten killed with the home run. So he's under contract for next year. He had a 4.99 ERA, 4.19 FIP. So he's not great, but he's a guy that can get you through some innings. Now, he's sort of a test case for me because I think major league teams are too conservative with this. They bring in their bullpen games. They're absolutely afraid to death to give up any runs. And then in the end, they end up overworking their bullpens, and their bullpens give up runs anyway. So why not stick with a guy like Chris Paddack, who'll get you 5 innings, maybe 6. 5 innings, 3 runs allowed. It's not great, but he doesn't usually blow up. Is there some value in having Chris Paddack around for that reason?
No question about it. And this isn't your garden variety innings eater with 6 strikeouts per 9 and decent walk rate. He's kind of like Bailey Ober in sheep's clothing, right? I mean, it's maybe not quite as many strikeouts, but they've been there before. And the velo is, we'll see where it settles in. He spiked before he got hurt, or no, he spiked in 2023 as a reliever. Sorry. But in 2022, he's 93, 94. And if it doesn't work out, I think you just move him to the bullpen. I'm not saying he's a sunk cost. I just don't see anybody trading it for him in a way that makes sense for the Twins to get something back that they can actually use and not lose the trade.
Yeah, if the Twins could somehow mentally project my will on the rest of the league, that we need 5 inning, 6 inning guys, 3 earned run guys. Paddack is that. He could help somebody. He could help somebody like the White Sox, or maybe not in the Twins' own division. But there's lots of teams that should be comfortable with pitching a guy like this once every 6 days. So,
especially an offense like the Twins that can at times score 5-6 runs a night. You should win.
Try scoring some runs. How about that?
Right.
Try scoring some runs, and don't make it so that you go into every game thinking, "Oh, the pitcher's got to hold him down to 1, or shut him out, or we're screwed." I think that mentality is kind of overtaken front offices a bit too much. So, it kind of in the moment maybe doesn't seem like Paddack is a guy that's giving you a lot, but then you look back and you go, "Hey, that wasn't that bad," and I think he could be useful again in that sense. So that leaves us now with Joe Ryan, the last guy on our list for this show. I'm not concerned about the long-term issues of a teres major injury, but anytime you're talking about a shoulder issue, I just wonder if it's going to take him some time at the beginning of the season to kind of get back into his groove, and that uncertainty. Where does that put the Twins going forward? I think longer term, like by the end of the 2025 season, I think Joe Ryan's going to be fine. He's going to be great. He's going to have a chance to be the best version of himself. It's the first couple months of the season where you kind of wonder, well, are they going to have to cover for him for a while?
I think that's why you have to keep Paddack, is because Paddack could possibly kind of smooth over any issues with if David Festa takes a step back, or Zebby Matthews doesn't take a step forward, or Simeon Woods Richardson remains the competent but not outstanding pitcher he was this year. There's depth there to where I think they could weather the storm if Joe Ryan needs some time. But with that said, that to me is why I think I would keep Paddack. And Paddack, I think he's going to get like $7.5 million. That's not cost prohibitive to where you got to flip him. I don't care what you claim your budget is. I don't care. Got to right size the budget. No, Paddack to me at that number, keep him. And for that reason alone, he and Joe Ryan to me kind of make sense to work in tandem. Ideally, you'd get 30 starts from Ryan and maybe 20 from Paddack, and then Paddack is a better match for, let's say, Zebby as a, if you try to neatly get a 5-man rotation, that doesn't exist. That's not a real thing. If you can get 30 starts from someone like Zebby plus Paddack, or some, kind of overhang from that combined 30 starts, I think that should be the goal going into 2025. I can't believe 2025. We're already talking about 2025 like it's next year. It's math.
Like it's next year. Yeah, I know. It doesn't. That seems like such a high number. Like thinking about the year 2000 as a kid, it just seemed like so far away and so far in the future. And where are my flying cars? And now we're here. Where is this in Blade Runner? This is like 6 years into Blade Runner time, and there are no flying cars, and there aren't. Our androids kind of suck, so it's not. The future is not promised.
Maybe it's self-driving cars instead of flying cars. We just missed the mark a little bit.
Well, hopefully they're not self-exploding cars as well. But
No.
Joe Ryan. I'd like to think that this injury is not going to prevent him from continuing.
It's a Terrace minor for the Terrace major, right?
Yes, yeah, and it's too bad because he put some miles per hour on his fastball, and he definitely is
so good.
He did. He looked really good, and that we talk about the one moment in time with Bailey Ober against the Royals where things went bad. I think if Joe Ryan doesn't get hurt, it's a playoff team. I think I don't think there's any question about it. I think that is, that would have solved a lot of issues on the front end and the back end, and with confidence and just winning some games. And it's really too bad that had to happen. But like I said, I don't think this. I think it is a minor setback for him. I do wonder, though, in addition to having to spot him during the beginning parts of the season, is it going to prevent him from making more improvements in the offseason because he's on a little bit of an altered schedule because of this injury? So I wonder if it could be a setback for that too.
Could be. Yeah.
I think one last thing about this, I think 6-man rotation. They've talked about being open to the possibility. I think they have enough guys and enough reason to at least start the season with something like that in view. So
I like it. Yep, I love it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Predicting Twins players 2025 futures, part 4. For Brandon Warren, do we mention Sully or not?
No, but go check out Sully Locked On MLB. Great dude, great podcaster. Check him out.
So we did mention Sully. For Brandon, this is Dave. Wishing you all a very pleasant good evening and saying we're going to Casilla
tomorrow night.
Where'd we go?
Hey.